All Byron Nelson wanted when he was playing the game was to be the best in his own time. And so he was. Meet Byron Nelson tonight on Golf Talk Live. The following is an encore presentation of Golf Talk Live. Byron Nelson is the father of the modern golf swing, and there are many sons who emulate his methods today, like John Cook, who won last week's Bob Hope Chrysler Classic and learned to play as a protege of Ken Venturi, who was in turn a protege of Byron Nelson's. Like Tom Watson, who treated the golf world to the most emotional victory of 1996. Byron Nelson accomplished everything he set out to do, on and off the course. Before joining the tour, he perfected new theories about the best way to handle the transition from hickory shafts to steel. Byron Nelson's record started with a 9-hole playoff victory in the Glen Garden Country Club Caddy Championship over another 15-year-old named Ben Hogan. Byron joined the tour in 1932 and won his first official event, the Metropolitan Open, in 1936. He would win 52 tour events during his brief playing career, total exceeded only by Snead, Nicklaus, Hogan, and Palmer. He won his first major championship, the Masters, in 1937, and received first place money of $1,500, a huge amount at the time. He won the Masters again in 1942 in a playoff against boyhood friend Ben Hogan. He won the U.S. Open in 1939 in a playoff, this time against Craig Wood. He won the PGA Championship in 1940 and 1945, and was a member of the Ryder Cup team in 1937 and 47, and was selected in 1939 and 41 when the competition was not played during the Second World War. He was selected to captain the winning team in 1965. In 1944, he won 9 times, and in 1945, he won 18 of 30 events he entered, 11 of them in a row, and finished second 7 times. He was named the Associated Press Athlete of the Year in both seasons, and in 1946, Byron Nelson retired to his ranch in Roanoke, Texas, after his 6th victory of that season. He made occasional appearances on tour thereafter and won the 1951 Crosby Pro-Am and the French Open in 1955. He's been an author, a farmer, a teacher, a broadcaster, a friend, a son, and a loving husband. He was in early 1997 awarded the PGA Tour's Lifetime Achievement Award. His impact on the game is as strong today as it was when he dominated the tour. Byron Nelson is one of the greatest players to ever grace our game, and a man whose accomplishments will set the target for every great player of every generation to come. What a great pleasure to have you here again, sir.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm delighted to be here. It's fun.
Will it be rude of me if I wish you a 1 week early happy birthday?
No, I'm glad I'm here for you to be able to do it.
You know, we talk about your being the father of the modern golf swing, and I'm not so sure that everybody understands that it's because you had a notion to swing the club a little bit more upright than Jones's around with the hickory shaft, which he needed to do to allow for the properties inherent in hickory to work for him.
Well, absolutely. When they changed from the hickory to the steel shaft about in 1931, actually Jones won the Grand Slam using the hickory shaft. In 1931, the National Open was won at Enridge, Toledo, by Billy Burke, and it was the first time that a national championship had been won with a steel shaft. Well, of course, right away the steel shaft started catching on. People started playing with it. And it's a funny thing, Peter, The people that use the wood shaft said the hickory shaft will never be successful. Well, the hickory shaft and steel and on down, all the various things that we have to play with today. But how come I got the credit, so to speak, for doing that was the fact I was the first player to come along after that change to use the steel shaft and to change from what we call the pronation, this old rolling like this, instead of taking the club back and more upright, which you had to do to use the steel. And so I started playing that way, and I fortunately developed reasonably fast, and I was the first one of the younger players that came out and used that way of playing, and it worked. And so they said that I was the father of the modern swing. Well, that's a little bit far stretched, but nevertheless, the funny thing, I started, in doing that, you had to use more legs, more lower part of the body. And Gene Sarazen, who was great and one of the greatest players that ever lived, used the old way and hit against a stiff left leg. Well, when I came along and started using a lot of foot and leg action, he said, Nelson will never make a good player because he uses feet and legs too much. So, but I guess that Sarazen, and I played him in the PGA Championship 1941 at Cherry Hills, and we had a big, tough match, but I beat him. I played him again in 45 in the PGA Championship, and I won. And I beat him again, so I think he is convinced that maybe that what I was using was all right.
When you beat him that second time in 45, that was when he came in to you afterwards and said that you double-crossed him, right?
Yes, well, no, not the second time. The first time when we played Cherry Hills, he was hitting his irons wonderfully well, and he came in and he said, Byron said, you double-crossed me today. And I said, well, Gene, how did I do that? And he said, well, I was hitting my irons so well that I thought I'd drive just in the fairway, but I'd drive me a lot, and I hit it on the green, and it would bother you. And he said it turned out that I did that, but you still put the ball inside of me.
You know, with each passing year, some of the great years in the history of our game seem to get larger. Your 1945, Hogan's 1953, Jones's 1930. When you were still an 18-year-old in 1930, what was your reaction, given that you were going to try to qualify in the amateur the next year in 31, to what Jones did in 1930, and was it an inspiration for you?
Well, not really, because I had thought that he had played so well, and I'd read stories about his family was a substantial family and had a lot of money and the stuff. So there's not a build-up, believe it or not, there's more build-up almost now about Jones's Grand Slam than there were then, because golf has grown so much, it's so much more published, it's so much, you had television, you had radio, you had everything now. And so I never thought that much about it, but I loved to play golf the very first time I caddied. And I just wanted to be a good player. I really, when I started playing, I never thought about the fact of ever being a golf professional, because there was no money in being a golf professional those days, and wasn't until after the World War and World War II. And so the net result was that you played for fun. I was playing in the amateur golf for fun. And so I had been fairly successful in winning a lot of amateur tournaments, but I tried to qualify on one time for the National Amateur, and I did. And it was played at Beverly Country Club in Chicago. And I had never played on bent grass. In Texas then, all the golf greens, especially at Glen Garden where I was, were stiff Bermuda, which was very difficult putting, and slow. So when I got up there, I'd never used it, and I didn't get there in time to play a practice round and qualified 36 holes. I three-putted 13 times in 36 holes, only missed qualifying but one. But I did get to see the great Francis Ouimet play that won the championship there. But then I turned pro on November the 22nd, 1932. And how come I'd do that was a good friend of mine, a golf professional that had been at Glen Garden, had gone to Texarkana as the pro there. His name was Ted Longworth. And he wrote me a letter and said they're going to play an open tournament there. He got together a bunch of players and stuff. And so I decided I'd go over and play. Well, I got on the bus and had my little caddy bag of almost what clubs I had, and I went over there. And on the way over there, I decided, well, I've been playing pretty well. I think that I still didn't think that much about it being a playing professional. So on the way over there, I decided that I did have $5, and I said, I'm going to enter as a professional. And that day and time, all you had to do was walk on the tee and give them the entry fee and say, I'm playing for the money. That turns you pro. Well, so I got on the tee and I get that, and they said, you really want to do that, Byron? I said, yes, I do. So I entered the tournament, and the funny thing about that, Peter, there was 120 people entered at $5 a piece. That's 100. That's 500, and I mean that's $600. And the total prize money was $500, so we didn't even get back all of our entry fee money. And I went in third one, $75, and I said, boy, this is great. I've never seen that much money in my pocket before in my life.
We're going to take a short break. We will be right back with Byron Nelson. If you'd like to speak with him, call us at 1-800-842-9987. Don't go away. When you hit the most famous shot in the history of golf, the double eagle with your Turf Rider 4-wood, Hagen, your playing partner, did say to you, and I want you to confirm this or not, could you hurry up and make up your mind between the two clubs, Gene? I have a date tonight.
That's true.
It is true.
Yeah.
Did he do that to you all the time?
Not all the time, but he did go into the 15th hole because, you know, we were on the tee, and there was a fellow by the name of Joe Williams. He was a sports editor of the New York Sun, and he heard this loud cheer on the 18th green, and that was Craig Woodhull, a birdie putt, and they practically conceded the tournament to him. So Williams looked over, he says, I've seen enough of you two bums, I'm going back to the clubhouse. Well, we walked down the fairway and we started debating about that second shot, the caddy and myself.
Stovepipe, right?
Stovepipe. And Hagen is down on my right, down on the right side of the fairway, and he yelled over, he says, hurry up, I've got a dinner date tonight. So I hesitated a little while, and I got the club and played it and hit the ball. The minute I hit it, I knew it's going to go somewhere towards that green, and it went over the water, and it trickled up. I never realized it went in the hole until I saw the people all jumping. There was only about 25 people up there.
And one of them happened to be you.
Yes, by accident I was there because of course, my score was not as low as Gene, so I'd played ahead of him. And on the 17th hole, I drove to the right. The 15th hole and 17th are parallel, and I drove to the right, and I had to wait to play my second shot to the 17th hole while his gallery was getting out of the way for me to play, that he'd going down the 15th. So I stood right there and had him see it. And Gene says that he's had, you know, there's probably about 5,000 people, 4,000 or 5,000 people, and he says that 50,000 people have told me they saw that shot. So.
And you saw it actually go in the hole, though, didn't you?
Yes, I was far enough back, I saw it go in the hole.
Now, a couple of years later, you started to make some pretty big history of your own at Augusta National. The 66 that you shot in the first round, and you won the tournament, was the lowest first round by a champion until Ray Floyd bettered that almost 40 years later.
Yeah, 39 years later. Yes, it's an amazing thing. Let me tell you, Peter, let me tell you a story about that 66.
Please do.
It's an unusual story. I got up that morning before the tournament, and I was a little, not nervous, but first, you know, I'd played in the Masters. This is my third time to play, so I wasn't all that nervous. But I go to, where I was staying at the hotel, there was the Bonaire Hotel at that time, and they had a big lobby, and there's a woman playing a Hammond organ, trying to sell it to the hotel to have. And so she was playing it, and after I'd finished my breakfast earlier, I thought, well, I'll sit down. I had plenty of time, sit down and let her play it. Well, she played the waltzes, Boo Danube, you know, that, and I kept listening to that about 30 minutes, and I'd go out the golf course. I never thought about this at the time, and I went out the golf course, and I kept had that rhythm in my mind, my subconscious, and I played that round. I hit every fairway, hit every par 5 and every par 3 and 1, every par 4 and 2, every par 5 and 2. I played 34 putts and 32 shots, shot 66. And that was the least number of strokes that I ever played to play a golf course. Not the least score, but the least number of strokes to actually play the golf course.
On the final day, on the 11th and 12th hole, when you had a lot of room to make up on Ralph Goodall, who you owed a couple of beatings to, tell us about 11 and 12.
Well, let me tell you about 10, because there's never... excuse me, there'd never been much said about the 10th hole because Gallery walked in the fairways then, and Ralph was playing in front of me, and I was 3 behind going the last 9. I go and walk down the 10th fairway, and the Gallery told me that Goodall just made 3 at the 10th. So now then, that means I've got to make a 3 or I'm 4 behind. Well, I got on the green. I was paired with Whiffy Cox, who was Port Congressional in Washington at that time, and I made about a 12-footer. So he said, "Kid," he called me Kid. He's an older man. "Kid, I think that's the one we needed." And then, of course, then I parred 11, and then the 12, Goodall, unfortunately for him and fortunately for me, he put this ball in the water and had to drop back, put it on the green, and I could stand on the tee, watch him do it, and he made 5. So I had, I thought in my mind right quick, man, oh man, 3 shots. If I can get on the green and make 2, I can catch that 3 shots. Well, fortunately I did. I got on the green about 12 feet in the hole and hold it for 2. So now I'm even. 13th hole then. Well, I drove a little bit to the right, but still nice in the fairway, a little bit on the upslope. And I watched Goodall play the 13th, and I saw him go in the water. I saw where he was in the water. I didn't see the shot, but I saw him go in the water. I saw him get out, so I realized he made 6. So I had a 3-wood to the green, a spoon we call them those days, a 3-wood to the green. I thought, man, I don't know. And this at that time, the left of the green was high, the right side was low. And if you hit it like this, it rolled right off in the water. So I made up my mind, well, I don't want to, I'm leading by 1 here, don't mean anything. I'm going to take, the good Lord hates a coward. So I'd grab my 3-wood, knocked it on the left-hand side of the green, chipped it in for 3. So I won, but that put me 3 ahead. And then I put on the 15th and 2 and 3 putted, but I parred in and beat him by 2 shots then.
When you made the 2 on number 12, I think you hit a 6-iron. In those days,
right.
They were calling that a spade. Is that where Spade Nelson began, or was that later?
No, Spade Nelson started before that. Well, I was playing in California, playing with a bunch of the younger players and some of the other players too, and I began to hit my irons pretty good. And I loved a 6-iron, he called a spade then, and it was equivalent of a 6-iron. And I'd play little shots with it or hard shots, and I played that a lot and played around the edge of the green. And so they started calling me Spade Nelson.
With good reason.
Yeah, that was all right with me.
We're going to talk to one of our viewers. We've got Ira in California. Hello, Ira.
Hi, Peter. What an honor to talk to you, Mr. Nelson. Did you ever regret hanging it up so soon and not continuing on to play?
No, sir, I never have regretted that. That is a lot of people. That's probably the question that's asked me more than nearly anything else. And I had set my goal for it as I got better and set my goals to accomplish certain things. And fortunately, I was able to do that. And that's fortunate, and took a lot of hard work to do it. And I was not making any money, and I wanted to do some other things in my life other than play golf, because, you know, a golf professional those days, you had to be employed at a club and other things to make a living. So I'd always wanted to ranch, so I decided I wanted to play hard the last year or 2 that I played on the tour. Wasn't enough money to get the ranch, and there has been some criticism that my record is fine, but it would have been better had I played longer. But I've been happy with what I've done, and if I had to do over, I'd hope I'd have the judgment to do for Byron Nelson just the thing that I did.
I think people, too, don't understand that you really had a series of goals at that time, particularly in 45, to have the lowest scoring average ever, to set the 72-hole record, to break the record of 4 wins in a row, which had stood by Johnny Farrell, and to earn enough money for the ranch. You did all of that. Yes,
that's right. I had done all that because, and I think people ask me about how come I played that well that year in 45, 44, 45, and 46, and I think there's no doubt in my mind, anybody else's mind that knew me, was the fact that was the goals. Those were the goals I had to win, especially the ranch, because I had been raised and came up through the Great Depression, it's called, and I saw people getting a lot of trouble that owed money. I didn't want to owe any money, so I knew if I bought that ranch, I'd have enough money to pay for it. So that gave me, every time I played around the golf in a tournament, well, I was thinking as much about making some money to pay for that ranch as it was about the tournament. And they had the double incentive, and I think that helped me keep the momentum going that I had.
Because every good shot added to all of the goals.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and take a short break, Byron. We will be right back with the great man right after this. know, everybody talks about 44, 5, and 6, but I thought one of the really great years that people don't appreciate so much was 39, because even though you won fewer events, 3 of them were majors at the time, even though only one of them remains a major today.
Well, I think, I appreciate you saying that. I feel that way about it because, see, in 39, the North and South, the Western, the Open, the PGA, that was really the 4 majors. Of course, the Masters was coming in also at that time, but those were considered the majors, and I won all of them but the PGA that year. And I lost in the 37th hole in the final to Pickard at Pominock in New York in the PGA. And I played wonderfully well, and he just played just one shot better than I did at 37 holes.
In 39, when, of course, that was the year that Sam Snead made his famous 8 on the last hole, when a 6 would have put him in the playoff, was there any sense at that time, because Sam had lost the Open in 37 to Ralph Goodall, even though Sam had gotten in and played beautifully, that he was snake bit a little bit at the end of majors, or was it too soon to think that?
Oh, there wasn't anything said about that then. I think that was definitely too soon because it's just one of those things that I think that anybody who's won, let's say our 3 majors or the British Open now, which are the 4 majors, I think that it's you're fortunate because there's been so many good players such as Palmer, Tom Watson, and Sam Snead. How are you going to beat those 3 players? And they're all lacking 1. So, and a lot of people have been critical of me that I only have 3 because I didn't play in the British but once. And I played it twice, once when I was still playing and once 9 years after I'd retired. But you had to realize, Peter, that you had to ride on a boat to go to England when I was playing. And you had to take a leave of absence for a month. I played the British Open and finished 4th at Carnoustie in 1937 when I went over on the Ryder Cup team. But I still had to take a leave of absence. Actually, I finished 4th and I won $187. And I had to take leave of absence from the club and I won $187. I got home and I figured out that it cost me $3,000 and I didn't like to ride boats anyway, so I'm not going back.
You know, your buddy Sam was here and he told me the same thing, that in 46, he went over and won the British Open at St. Andrews, and when he figured out the prize money and deducted that from his expenses, he said, I'm never coming back here. Let's go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the thing about the British Open really was started by one thing, maybe 2 things at the same time. One was jet aviation and Arnold Palmer.
Yep, everybody thinks Arnold invented television that year, too, in 1960.
Right. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk to Eddie in Massachusetts. How are you tonight, Eddie?
I'm fine, Peter. How are you?
Good. Thank you for calling us.
Good. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Nelson and wish him a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to ask him, of all the tournaments that he won, which one does he value the most? Thank you.
Which tournament I won I valued the most? The Masters in 1937. The reason for that was the fact that I was young, I was beginning. At that time, I was the youngest man that had ever won the Masters. I was 25. And I played such a fine round in the first round, shot 66, and then I faltered some, and then played the last 9 so great in 32 to come back and win. That gave me a lot of confidence and made me realize that I had the ability to play that well under stress, and that's the main reason why that I think that was the tournament that did more for me than any other tournament that I ever won.
The next year, of course, you got to play with Bob Jones in the first round because it was his custom to play with the defending champ in the first round and the leader in the last round, a duty that you took over for him approximately 10 years later. How exciting was it for you to play with Bob to open up the 38 Masters? Well,
very exciting because, you know, Bob Jones was the greatest name in the golf, including the pros in those days. Hagen, Sarazen, Jones, that was the 3 top men. And he was a very nice man and very polite and was a beautiful player. And naturally, I looked up to him, and I had met him the year before. The first time when I won, I got the presentation to me in 1937 when I won, and then they got to play with him in 38. Well, that was really, well, young players in those days, you looked up to these great players, and of course he was a great gentleman as well as a great player.
And of course that was even in the days before the green jacket. You got a gold medal, right?
Yeah, you just got a gold medal, that's right.
Which wasn't so bad.
And 1,500.
Which isn't so bad either, especially then. Bob in Georgia, what are you thinking about tonight?
How are you guys doing this evening?
We're doing
Fine.
terrific.
I just want to let you know I got Golf Channel as a Christmas gift on my cable system. I'm really, really enjoying it. My question to Mr. Nelson is quite an honor to get to speak to you. I noticed through watching Shell's Wonderful World of Golf and a lot of the Golf Channel classics, it seems that the greens back in those earlier days were a lot slower, thus the riskier stroke. I mean, does that make a big difference in your opinion as far as shot making today, and it's become more of a putting contest than a true shot making contest as far as the game of golf goes? And thank you very much.
Well, I think that part of what you said is true. The greens that we played in those days they were never uniform. There was no such thing as a verticut machine or aerating machine. And each town you came to, except at certain places, the greens were good all the time. They had Bermuda greens, and other greens had bent greens, rye greens, and whatever. And so also had a lot of grain, and you had to use a putter that had a little loft on it to get the ball up out of the grain and get it rolling. And if you watch on their television that we put out from here, if you watch that and see the older players play, old games played, you'll notice them hitting a putt. You don't hit a putt on these beautiful fast greens they have now. You roll it, and they roll the ball so beautifully now, and the greens are so much different. So I think that has had one reason why that the putting is much better than we played. I think our shot making value was our good players as the shot making value is today. We didn't hit the ball as far because we didn't have the golf ball nor the equipment they have today. But I think that the putting is so much better. I always say now that grass agronomy has helped the game as much as the better equipment.
Now, one of the things that you did in terms of practicing less than most others was putting, because the greens were so inconsistent from hole to hole and week to week. But answer this: why then, given the improvements in agronomy, given that putters are better today than they were then because what you're rolling the ball on is more consistent, why are people only threatening and not breaking the records that you and Hogan set? For example, he shoots 261, and 2 weeks later in the same year, 1945, you shoot 259. That record stayed for 10 years until Suchak broke it. But they're knocking up against it today, but not busting through.
Well, I think that there's a definite reason for that is the fact that, you see, the golf courses this different thing. The golf courses have lengthened now, basically, than what we played as a whole. Sure, you played Inverness and Wingfoot and Oakmont and places still the same, more or less, as what they were in the days when we played. But basically, the golf courses are longer. And so that has made up for we used about, they're using now, even though they hit the ball a lot farther, they're still using about the same clubs as what we did. So if we were good players then they're good players now, and that's why the good players, the equal scores, are pretty much even.
We're going to take another short break. We will be right back with Byron Nelson right after this.